Mark Levin, they call him the Great One, host of Life, Liberty, and Levin on this network, as well as his radio program. Mark, you were on our program 2 years ago on Fox and Friends Weekend saying you believed that the Obama team was spying on the Trump team. No one was talking about it then. You were. Here we are today with the Mueller report 675 days later. Your take on where we are.
You know, 2 years ago, all I did is I pulled together media reports, because the FBI and the Department of Justice were leaking to the media. How else will we know about two FISA requests? How else will we know that the intelligence agencies were unmasking? How else will we know any of these things? And the reason is they were leaking at the FBI, and now we know it's a fact. They were leaking at the Department of Justice, now we know it's a fact. And so all I did is put together the different exhibits from the different media outlets, including the New York Times, McClatchy, and so forth. And the general parameters of this were laid out, and they were stunning at the time. And I might add, there was a chorus of media attacking me as a conspiracy theorist and everything. How can I be a conspiracy theorist when I'm reading their reporting? What we have here is Mediagate. Now, what do I mean by that? We have had thousands and thousands of stories on cable TV, on network TV, in the New York Times, Washington Post, exclusives, anonymous, government officials, former government officials, lying to us about conspiracies, coming indictments, lying to us about obstruction and meetings that took place. Just fed stuff by the federal government, by the Obama administration previously, fed stuff by the bureaucracy, fed stuff by the Hillary campaign, like the dossier. We had an iron triangle here. The Hillary campaign that funded the dossier, the Obama administration, the Department of Justice, FBI, and the intelligence agencies, and the media. And the media, which is supposed to watch the powerful, the media, which is supposed to watch the government, threw in with this government in order to take out Donald Trump. Now, I want to talk about a few things because it's getting a little convoluted with the endless speculation out there. Bill Barr is not part of the Postal Service where he picks up the report and gives it to Congress. This regulation has been in place for 20 years since the Clinton administration. His job is to look at this report to make sure there isn't secret 6E grand jury information which legally is not permitted to be made public. It's his job to make sure that FBI raw notes, 301s, are not distributed publicly. It's his job to make sure classified information is not distributed publicly. And, believe it or not, it's his job to make sure that people aren't smeared who haven't been charged. Bill Barr and the executive branch, they're not the impeachment arm of the House of Representatives for the Democrats. The special counsel report to the Attorney General is not an impeachment report for the House Democrats. Let me remind you about Leon Jaworski, the Watergate special prosecutor. They like to talk about Watergate. So do I. The vast majority of the Watergate report was under seal until just a few years ago. And here's why. This is a quote, if we have 30 seconds, from Leon Jaworski for the American people. For the Watergate special prosecutor to make public the evidence it gathered concerning the former president and others who were not charged with criminal offenses would be to add another abuse of power to those that led to the creation of the special prosecutor's office. The federal rules...
President breaks his silence. He tweeted, "Good morning, have a great day." That was his substantive comment. Sarah, front page of the New York Times, I'm going to hold this up. It's the lead story with Mueller's report in, interest turns to New York, meaning the federal prosecutors in New York and their investigation. If, when we see this report, there are no bombshells or huge bombshells, will news organizations simply move on to, hey, what about this? There are all these other investigations, the one in New York, all the Democratic investigations in the House. Will they just sort of take a breath and move on to the other programs?
Yes, that's why this is a key moment for 2020. The narrative now splits. The narrative for Republicans goes to vindication. This report, you know, we haven't even seen the report yet, but we're seeing all of these headlines. And the narrative for Democrats is, well, hold up. Even if there's no indictments here, there are so many other sealed cases in the District of Columbia and the Southern District of New York that we still have to keep our eye on the ball.
I call that the "you just wait" theory of journalism. You just wait. It hasn't happened yet, but it could happen next week.
Yeah, but the disappointment that you could...
I understand. All right, so as I promised earlier, there have also been substantial coverage, much of it on the right, about President Trump's attacks on institutions, special counsel's office, the DOJ, especially when Jeff Sessions was there, the FBI. Has there been enough media attention, in your view, to the problems, as you see it, with the investigations themselves?
Right. There was always an option here of two competing theories. One was that Donald Trump was a traitor who had colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election, and therefore you needed to put spies on his campaign. You needed to wiretap multiple people associated with him. You needed to break all these norms. The other theory was that that would have been a very bad thing to do, that the Department of Justice did not behave appropriately when taking this information that really was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. That's not a theory. That's actually fact. That was revealed.
The Republican Party.
That was revealed. Actually, not true.
After
but
the
revealed
conservative wing.
But that's
in any case.
That's a fact.
In any case, there are all sorts of things that we haven't even begun to cover properly, much less investigate properly. We know that there were criminal leaks related. The whole way this investigation got going was in part through people leaking selective information to media outlets who didn't ask enough questions about why they were getting this information. So we have criminal leaks about people which have not been well investigated, certainly have not been well covered. Whether that's, and then also we have James Comey, who took documents that he shouldn't have taken. Andrew McCabe lying to investigators, which the Inspector General found about. Christopher Steele, who was the guy who invented the dossier, lying to the FBI, and Glenn Simpson, the guy who managed the project, lying to Congress. There are all sorts of things here that need to be covered well.
Having all the things that Molly mentioned, I've certainly read stories about it. Haven't those been covered to some extent? And also, but haven't the media, let's be candid here, been more outraged by what they've depicted, and maybe you share this view, of President Trump undermining confidence in law enforcement with his attacks on the various investigative bodies and even his own Attorney General?
Well, I would say two things. First of all, on the media, you showed a clip of Jeffrey Toobin of CNN saying the president can take a victory lap or he's headed for that. And you had Chris Wallace of your own network, who sits here only a couple of hours ago, saying we have more to see. So I do think there's a balance. It's being covered from both ends. In very simple terms, the news covers what's happening, and this is what's happening. On the law enforcement front, I think we have a couple of problems here. Until 2 months ago, the Democratic Party was really just in the desert. We were watching. The special counsel was created by the Deputy Attorney General, who is a Trump appointee, who worked for Jeff Sessions, who is a Trump appointee. Southern District of New York is a Trump appointee. I would understand these accusations a little bit more if the Democrats ran the world, but we don't. The problem with law enforcement that I think 20 years, 25, 50 years from now that we're all going to suffer for is there are two institutions that are important to American society: law enforcement, which is formally part of the government, and media, which is not, but play an important role, that they have both been decimated in terms of credibility. And we're all going to suffer for that.
In the past, we've had issues where law enforcement failed to do a good job, and we had the media holding them accountable. We got the Church Commission out of this in the 1970s. Clearly, we've had a breakdown of trust because of the unevenness in which the FBI has handled handling one campaign versus another and some political partisans versus others. There is a much effort that needs to be done to hold them accountable. Unfortunately, I think that our media are in no place to do that.
You want to hear an imbalance? Jim Comey, a week before the election, saying, hold on a second, we found one more little hard drive, and not mentioning that Donald Trump's campaign is...
Let's not relitigate that
no,
right
but,
now.
But you can't say that,
relevant
that there's a huge imbalance.
The question of how much Bill Barr should reveal. If he's not indicting people, do you then trash them? Do you say, here's the evidence we have, but it wasn't enough for an indictment? That's going to play out in the next few days. Final question for you, Sarah. Joy Reid, MSNBC host, about 16 hours after Attorney General Barr got this report from the Mueller office, says, well, you know, Trump controls the Justice Department. This guy, meaning the AG, is not recused. It feels like the seeds of a cover-up are here. Now, Barr says he's going to go to the Hill and brief. Whether it's an adequate briefing, we can see. Seeds of a cover-up.
Way too far. It's in his best interest, by the way, in order to ensure the institutional trust, to reveal at least what he can, if not all, to Congress. So for her to say that preemptively without knowing how he's going to act, to me seems very one-sided.
All right. On that note, Philippe Bryant, Molly Hemingway, Sarah Fisher, thanks very much.